Hi, I'm April Webb. I am an artist, a mixed media artist from Florida. I'm a mom, and that's a big part of my practice. I'm Floridian through and through, so because of that, I went to Florida State University for graduate school, and I went to Flagler, which is a small college in St. Augustine, Florida, for my undergrad. And that sort of small town mentality, living in the South, these things have affected my practice. So my broader practice looks at women's invisibility, and I think about that in labor, I think about that in home life, just the way that places are structured. This can be anything from the way that restrooms don't take into account that women are primary caretakers and we need more space for taking care of infants and elderly people, to how bus systems are designed, the way that places where it snows, they don't tend to clear the snow on sidewalks until after they clear the snow on streets, but that doesn't help women walking to children with walking to school with small children. And obviously there's a lot of places where this plays out, but anywhere that I see it, I try to make work that comments on that. So I became a painter, and then when painting took up far more time, and paints are toxic, a lot of them are, you don't have to use toxic paints, but I was an oil painter and those things contain heavy metals. So there's time, there was toxins, and I had a small child and there just didn't have the space and time to maintain that practice. And I thought, did I imagine myself as a painter because I am a painter in my soul, or did I imagine myself as a painter because I started painting? And when I realized that I didn't need to be beholden to paint as a material and that other materials could read as paintings, I was able to take the materials of my actual life, the things that I was already doing, and I was able to turn those things into art, which is why there's mop pads, which is why there's dryer lint. These things were already part of life, and allowing life and art to mix is the only way that you're going to be able to hold on to it. So this exhibition looks at how women's labor is undervalued, right? Women do 70% of the world's unpaid labor, and these things are what make paid labor possible. And so looking at all of the things in my home that would be considered garbage, right? If I'm doing an appropriate job maintaining my space, then you don't notice all of the work that I've done. It's only when I fail in those areas that it's obvious that I've somehow been mismanaging my home life, right? So in that sense, I looked around and I started talking to other women about the things that they were using, collecting, keeping, and how cyclical these practices are. So behind me these are all bundt cakes made out of dryer lint, because a lot of the women that I talked to were saving dryer lint, mostly because it would just be cumbersome to have to throw it away every single time. But having this receptacle in their dryer, like in their laundry room where they kept all of their lint. And so now it's nice because I get to mix not only my own labor, and my own hair and skin and sweat, because these are the realities of doing laundry, but it physically represents all of the women who I've drawn from as well. So a lot of materials, because they're typically disposable, I use mop pads in it a lot, Swiffer pads, these disposable pads that every time I did mop my floor, I kept seeing this V shape, and I know that it's just an artifact of the way that the Swiffer was designed. I've gotten a new Swiffer since then, and I'm sad to say that the V no longer exists in it. But finding patterns in the work, finding patterns in the dirt, helped me to put meaning into the time and energy that goes into that practice. So when this was actually just before COVID started, I started thinking about the way that that invisibility is everywhere, right? The amount of work that goes into maintaining your space, you don't see the dust in my home if I'm doing it right. You don't see the dirt in my home if I'm sweeping it right. But a place in which you don't think about often, and for that reason, I probably let go too long, is air filters. And so I was looking at these air filters and thinking about how they were representation, like, of the literal air that I was breathing. They had my own home in it through the air itself. And so just trying to find beauty and to elevate how important those things were, especially then when COVID started, and I think we were all thinking about our air quality. We were thinking about the invisible things way more than we ever had before. And so what better way to sort of capture that invisible portion of our lives and how important it is than to elevate it through sculpture, through craft, through framing, and to make sure it just gets its proper place front and center. I think the biggest thing I'd like for people to take away from this exhibit is just to know that the other people maybe feel the same way that they do about these things that they're always involved in, that they're perpetually doing, take up so much of their life, and yet feel as though are underappreciated. Maybe they all start to appreciate their own labor or the labor of a partner or a spouse or a parent, and just seeing how much work goes into maintaining everyday life makes everyday life a little bit more beautiful. I teach. I'm currently working for Florida State University. I'm an adjunct professor, and typically you adjunct for a few years until you move on to attempting a tenure track position. So I really want to impart that passion for art and learning into the future artists that are coming up, right? I want to continue to give that to them. So I never plan on stopping making. I don't know that I could if I tried. It's more of an obsession than a career choice. But part of what makes that obsession rewarding is being able to share it with other people.